I am the director of the National Center for Science Education, which is a nonprofit that defends the teaching of evolution in the public schools. I'll describe a little bit some of our activities here, but as presented in this article by Sandy Blakesley of the New York Times, apparently we're pretty good at what we do. Dr. Duane Gish from the Institute for Creation Research wrote, "Accused the center of intimidation and always threatening to sue." We don't have any money to sue. Well, never mind. "They are censors and book burners," he said in a telephone interview. "They were organized for the sole purpose of fighting creationism and to keep any evidence for creation science out of the public schools." But he acknowledged they're effective. I'll settle for that. Unfortunately, the opposition doesn't always take such a, even if grudging, view of our effectiveness. In a recent email we received at NCSC, we received a somewhat different point of view. By the way, if you ever visit us in our Oakland offices, please do stop by our bathroom, which is where we put all of this stuff. It's much more interesting. One of my favorites, though, is on the web, which you can find if you go to the Creation Evolution Hall of Shame. Little better is the snide and utterly hypocritical tax dollar leeching control freak Eugenie Scott, who equates objections to evolutionary dogmatics to a refusal to study science itself. Well, we don't get any tax money, and you'll have to ask my staff if I'm a control freak, but nonetheless. But actually, occasionally we receive some comments from the opposition which sound really quite encouraging. Scott definitely speaks scientese. She presents herself as a scientist, which she once was, who is trying to do the right thing for science. She is very charismatic, funny, and very good at getting people behind what she's saying. It's no wonder she's the director of NCSE. Well, I felt pretty good when I read that. But it goes on. In the past, I've compared Eugenie C. Scott to Darth Vader because she is full of internal contradictions, knows in her heart she's lying, powerful. I like that. Persuasive, and most importantly, she travels around representing the empire and fighting the good guys. But enough about me. I'm here to tell you a little bit about NCSC and also the opposition. There basically are two kinds of anti-evolutionism today in the United States. One is a Bible-based, biblical literalist anti-evolutionism, creation science, young earth creationism. The second is a design-based kind of creationism, intelligent design theory. I'll talk a little bit about each of these. The more familiar, older kind of creationism, creation science, is represented by Duane Gish and Henry Morris of the Institute for Creation Research and Ken Ham of Answers in Genesis. It's really based upon Henry Morris's writings from the early 60s on. Morris is certainly the most important anti-evolutionist of the 20th century, bar none. And creation science is the idea that you can take the literal truth of Genesis, the special creation of the whole universe, not just man, not just like Michelangelo's creation here, but all creatures, but also the planet Earth, the solar system, the galaxy, all the galaxies. The whole shooting match was produced in 1 week period by the direct hand of God. This view is called special creationism, and what makes creation science of interest to somebody like me is that they claim there are scientific data and theory that can support this point of view. What's kind of interesting is that mainstream Christians are driven crazy by these people because this is not mainstream Christianity. People are sometimes surprised when I tell them that more evolution is taught in Catholic schools than in public ones. Catholics and mainstream Protestants are not biblical literalists, and they're embarrassed by this particular special creationist point of view. But these are the most aggressive of the anti-evolutionists. If you see bumper stickers like these, you'll know you're pretty much dealing with a young earth creationist. Darwin is dead and he ain't coming back. There's an awful lot of warfare metaphors going on in the creationist literature. It's a struggle between creation and evolution, between Christianity and atheism, between good guys and bad guys, light and dark, and so forth. The largest creation science organization is the Institute for Creation Research. They have 2 quite large buildings, and they've just purchased the adjacent land to the current site for a new capital campaign, which, by the way, they always pay for in cash. These are not, no borrowing is necessary here. They can do this on their donations. And their museum, which is the edifice on the lower left-hand side here, has tens of thousands of visitors every year. And what they get is a young Earth creationist view, 10,000-year-old Earth, Grand Canyon was cut by Noah's flood, and all of this is proven by scientific data and theory. The Answers in Genesis organization up outside of Cincinnati, run by Australian Ken Ham, is also in the process of building a museum. It seems like creationist museums are quite the thing these days. Just to kind of give a little balance, a little perspective here. Here is the gleaming skyscraper of NCSE in Oakland, California, just to give you a little bit of a perspective on what we're talking about. Well, the other kind of anti-evolutionism is the intelligent design theory proponents. And this is a much more sophisticated kind of anti-evolutionism than we find with the traditional young Earth creationists. These folks never mention the Bible, never mention Adam and Eve, never mention Noah's flood. It's just, to the general public, they present a somewhat amorphous, well, an intelligent agent did something at some time. And people think, well, that's fine with me, believers get sucked into this. Actually, it is a very specific sectarian view. It is actually something called progressive creationism, where God intervenes at specific times throughout history and creates specially complex organisms, like bacteria, flagella, and DNA, and so forth and so on. The major think tank of the intelligent design movie is in Seattle at the Discovery Institute, and it's an organization called the Center for Renewal of Science and Culture. These are some of the principles involved there from an old 1996 newspaper. These folks are still involved. Steve Meyer, John West, Bruce Chapman, Paul Nelson, John Wells. Now, they claim to not be a religious organization, but really a scholarly organization, a scientific organization. And yet, when you look at the history of their website logo, you find a definite evolution towards secularism. This was the first logo on the website of the Center for Renewal of Science and Culture, a very clearly religious Michelangelo's creation. They made it a little bit less religious in the second incarnation. They took out Adam, added instead a little DNA molecule, which of course makes God really, really, really little, but never mind. There are a lot of theological problems with this approach, folks. Then they dropped Michelangelo completely and went to this Hubble telescope galaxy picture, which is quite nice. And then they made one final change, and if you go to discovery.org and look these folks up, you'll find that they have dropped the word renewal. They are now the Center for Science and Culture rather than Center for Renewal of Science and Culture. Clearly, the AAAS, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, is not the American Association for the Renewal and Advancement of Science. Renewal is kind of a non-scientific term, so they dropped that. Now, some of us think that there's another Hubble galaxy that they might use instead of the one that they have, but they haven't taken us up on that suggestion. So what do we do at the National Center for Science Education? Well, we, unlike the national science and education organizations like the National Academy of Science or the National Association of Biology Teachers, who are sort of limited to national kinds of activities, we work at the grassroots. We provide information and advice, sometimes political advice. How do you write a letter to the editor? You don't make it 3 pages long. We provide analyses of the creationist position, scientific information, and good old advice to individuals working at the grassroots to try to keep creationism out of the schools or to try to keep evolution in. And you have to realize that this is a partnering kind of situation. If we didn't have the wonderful people at the grassroots who actually go out and attend the school board meetings or attend the legislative committee sessions in the state legislature to argue against bills, a great deal of our, quote, success would not get done.